Look, I ain't afraid of no ghost, but I'm a little afraid of a non-doctor performing a tracheotomy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. I'll leave a link to it in the description below, and it'll give you a pretty good overview of what we do here at the Horror Movie Syllabus. But in short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore, but we're not doing that here. This is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation from you guys. A horror movie that you recommend in the comments to one of my other videos, something that I've never seen before, and then I watch it for the first time blind, not knowing much of anything about it. And then I let you know, is it syllabus worthy? Is there anything about it that's noteworthy enough, interesting enough, good enough to be on the horror movie syllabus? And today, the movie that we're looking at is The Haunting of Julia. And The Haunting of Julia was recommended by 2 of you. Sarah, aka the Rose Bride, friend to the channel, who has recommended many good movies. And she recommended it in our Paranoia video. And Igor Renfield, who's also made some interesting recommendations, who recommended it in our recent doctorate level series for the ghost subgenre. And they didn't say a whole lot about it. All I really had to go on was that it is both a ghost movie and a movie about paranoia. So that's what I had going in. I didn't look up anything else. I didn't look up any reviews, didn't even watch a trailer, nothing. Just the title and what I had, the where the movie had been recommended in my videos, and that's all I had to go on. Went in cold. But did I wind up liking it? Did I wind up hating it? Time to find out. Like I said, the movie that we're looking at today is The Haunting of Julia. The Haunting of Julia came out in 1977 and is known outside of the US as Full Circle, but I think Haunting of Julia is a better title. And it was directed by Richard Loncraine, who is a British director that I'm not super familiar with. He's done Wimbledon, which I've seen, and a few other movies that are maybe kind of noteworthy, but I'm not super familiar with his work. But I did know this movie's title. I've heard the title of this movie mentioned many, many times. Never seen it, didn't really know much what it's about. Assumed that it was something about a ghost because of Haunting of Julia, but didn't know much about it until I had a chance to sit down and watch it for this review. And this is an interesting one because it's, well, let's just dig into it actually. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a woman who loses her daughter to a horrible accident and winds up getting split up from her husband and moving into a new home that would appear to be haunted by the ghost of a young girl who seems vengeful and angry. And this woman decides to try to investigate and figure out what's up with this young girl ghost and what happened to her and why is she so angry and what's going on. And of course, what's making the hijinks abound, because they do in this movie. And I'll stop there so as not spoil it, of course. But the movie is a really solid, strong concept and story. So off the bat, we're getting something that's pretty interesting. It's based on a novel called Julia by horror novelist Peter Straub, who's written a lot of horror books. You might be familiar with some of his work. I know a little bit of it. And I think he wrote the screenplay for this as well. But he wrote the book that this is based on. And it's a pretty solid story that is taking an interesting approach to your traditional haunting movie, because traditionally what you have is a haunting movie where there's a ghost and it's haunting and it's doing something that's maybe an angry ghost, whatever. And not to say that that's not here, but there's this added layer of paranoia in the movie. Like I said, I've been told it's ghosts, a movie and a paranoia movie. And the paranoia aspect of it is pretty interesting because you've got this woman who's suffering grief from a loss, and you're kind of wondering, is she just being paranoid? She's wondering, is she being paranoid? And there's this aspect of it that is clearly she's being kind of gaslit by her husband or her ex-husband, who is kind of in there, kind of telling her that she's crazy and everything. And so there's this added layer of it where there is this question of whether or not her sanity is solid. And that is an interesting thing to explore. They have this, this inciting incident that happens in the very first scene where her daughter is choking to death. And I'll be honest with you, it is both dark and also hilarious because she's choking, and the husband is like, the father is like, just shake her, And like he doesn't really seem to have the sense of urgency of what is happening, and it's by design. Like it's not a mistake like badly done. It's to kind of give you a clue into what his character is like and how blasé he can be. But it comes off rather funny. But it also gets really really dark because again this little girl dies. That's what starts this whole thing happening, and. You've got the mom played by Mia Farrow. We'll get to her in a minute. Trying to do this emergency tracheotomy thing, it's wild. It's a wild start to the movie. And then admittedly the movie kind of downshifts a little bit. It gets a little slow after that as she moves out and starts experiencing weird phenomena and everything that starts talking to people about it. And kind of like wondering is she having a nervous breakdown based on the trauma that she's faced? And which brings us back to Mia Farrow. Because one of the things with this movie that's really good is that the cast is strong and it's anchored by Mia Farrow. She's the key to what makes this movie work. She didn't want to do this movie, from what I understand. Did some research after watching the movie. She was really kind of trying to get away from this kind of stuff after doing Rosemary's Baby, but they really tried to woo her and get her into this. And it was the right choice because having that Rosemary Baby connection to this really kind of enhanced the movie because it's admittedly a similar theme, right? This woman who's kind of now isolated and weird stuff's happening and people don't really believe her, and she's wondering kind of is she going crazy or is there something kind of like happening to her that's Rosemary's Baby, right? And so using Mia Farrow in the role is kind of almost a shortcut to that. You've got the audience already thinking that, so you're kind of already doing some of the work just by having her cast there. And she's very very good in this movie, just like in Rosemary's Baby. She's very very good in this movie. And it's funny, we talked about her sister Tisa Farrow recently in another video, and I said how Tisa Farrow was good in that movie as Anthropophagus, and when you see Mia Farrow, you're like, oh no, Mia Farrow is way better. She's a much more talented actor than her sister, and this is a kind of a showcase for that, and shows a little bit of why, because she really is anchoring this movie. She's holding it down. And interestingly enough, in the research, it was saying that she wanted to take a different approach to this character that she did to Rosemary by kind of saying, this character might be kind of suffering a nervous breakdown. And then there are some reports in there that maybe Mia Farrow actually had a bit of a nervous breakdown during this movie too. The director said something about that, but it's a little unclear as to whether he's talking about it in the movie or if he's talking about it in real life. But it was kind of an interesting thing that maybe this kind of had a bit of an effect on Mia Farrow in terms of her performance. But the performance is really, really good. Like I said, it's kind of the key in holding this movie together. But Keir Dullea from 2001 playing the husband has been mentioned as well because Keir Dullea is giving this performance of where he's a little over the top. Like he is almost mustache twirly villainy, but it's great. He's like maybe almost the best part of the movie because he's so clearly a jerk and just like trying to convince her that she's wrong and trying to get her to come home. And like I said, like his attitude about when his daughter's choking and everything like that kind of right off the bat sets the tone of what he's about. Now he's so self-absorbed and doesn't really care about other people, stuff like that. And that plays out into the movie and makes it pretty interesting. And he's great. He's unfortunately just not in the movie as much as I'd like him to be because he's really good in the movie. He's got that kind of unsettling look. If you've seen 2001, you know what I'm talking about. That unsettling look. He's just kind of a little off-putting looking, and it really works for the movie. And like, everybody, even the supporting cast, is all very strong. Everybody is doing good work. They have smaller roles and don't get a lot of screen time. And I would argue that maybe there might be too many characters in this movie. There's a lot of characters in the movie, so the other characters don't get as much of an opportunity to shine as much. But when they are on screen, they're doing very solid work. And the reason why there's so many cast members is because you've got a rather interesting mystery. The second half of this movie, the first half, you're kind of getting wrapped up in the spectral, ghostly things, the supernatural happenings, and then the second half, Mia Farrow's character starts investigating what's going on with this ghost in this house and everything, and starts getting into this mystery that I don't want to go into too much because I don't want to spoil the movie too much. But the second half of the movie, it's really engaging. The mystery, and again, I'm assuming it comes from the Peter Straub novel, which I've never read before, but it is a really interesting, engaging mystery. But as a result, she keeps meeting all these new people, and there's a lot of new characters and stuff like that. But it never gets confusing. I'm never like, oh, there's too many characters and I can't follow along. You are able to follow the story along just fine. It's just that you've got some really interesting performances happening from some really good actors. You're just not, they have like a scene or two, and then that's it. They go away. But it works for the story, it works for the mystery and everything like that. And that's the thing where this movie's got. It's got this, this mystery thing going on. It's got this, spectral, ghostly atmosphere and mood going on, and it's working for me. But it's a slow burn, and it might arguably be too slow. That is one of the things that the critics complained about in this. They said they called it slow and plodding, and To a degree, I can see what they're talking about. The pacing is a little bit of a slow hold, like a slow burn, and I can appreciate slow burn, especially a movie like this. It makes sense, but I admit that the second half of the movie does take off a little bit more. The first half of the movie, you're really relying on Mia holding the movie down. She really is bringing that Rosemary's Baby energy to it, which is a very good thing because it helps the movie out a lot. And then the music is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I don't remember who the composer is, but the music is doing a lot of the heavy lifting regarding mood and setting the tone of the movie. Like it really is good music, and it really does kind of give it that creep factor. Where, admittedly, not a lot is happening. This ghost isn't doing a whole lot of stuff in that first half, and so it does rely on the music to set that kind of creepiness of it. And then the scenes of the haunting, like I said, the ghost isn't doing a lot. The haunting scenes are a little bit thin. Like the kills and stuff like that, they're not amazing. They're not really super great, which is where I think the criticism of it being too slow comes from. Is that when there are hijinks, they're not super mind blowing or anything like that. The kills are mostly weak. Now there is an ending shot that I think is absolutely fantastic. I obviously won't spoil it, but it's a really great ending shot and kind of unsettling and disturbing. But the kills are kind of like you're not here for the gore. You know, you're not here for that shock factor and stuff like that. So it's really more about like how they make you feel, like the unsettling nature of what's going on, and especially the unsettling nature of what happened in the in the resolution of the mystery, which again I won't spoil, but that's where I think the movie's meat and potatoes really is. And some of the criticism of this, or not criticism, some of the reviews of this, specifically Kim Newman, if you're familiar with Kim Newman, the horror commentary guy, a video commentator, who's great. He compared this to Don't Look Now, and I see that. That actually is a really apt comparison to me. I think I probably think No Don't Look Now is the better movie, and we've talked about it before on the channel. But this does have a similar vibe to that. Like there's a creep factor into it. There's a child involved, and a dead child involved, and then there's like this mystery aspect of what's going on, and then there's a reveal and everything like that. So an apt comparison. This is kind of that vibe. So if you are into Don't Look Now, this might be what you're into here as well. But does that make it syllabus worthy? Well, let's find out. So, is The Haunting of Julia, aka Full Circle, syllabus worthy? Maybe. Maybe. I kind of feel like this one might squeak in for the right subgenre, and I'll explain. But I think this movie has enough of a cult love or a reputation to justify getting it onto the syllabus somewhere. And I liked it. I thought it was really good. Again, I want to be clear about this. It is a slow burn movie. I do think that the criticism that it's slow and kind of plotting is not an unfair criticism of it. I do think the kills could be a little bit better. I do think the haunting scenes could be a little bit better, but I think that the mystery is strong enough that it really held it together for me. I think Mia Farrow's performance was good enough that it held it together for me. So I was engaged. I liked this one, and like I said, I knew this name. I've heard this name multiple times. I knew the name of this movie, but that's all I knew about it. So is that enough of a reputation? Enough of a buzz to make it a syllabus? Well, maybe, but here's the thing. I don't think it would make it into the ghost subgenre. It's just too strong of a subgenre. There's too many great ghost movies. I don't think this one's going to be enough to beat one of those out. Same thing with haunted house. Like, she's in a haunted house, right? So you can make it a haunted house case for this, but I don't think it's going to beat out what we've got in the syllabus for the haunted house. I just don't think it's strong enough for that. Like the slow aspects of it are gonna hold it back from beating those out. But I do feel like there are several other subgenres where this might be a fit. Sarah had already mentioned paranoia, and I think that's a pretty solid place for this to go. The paranoia subgenre is for stuff like this, and while this movie really does have a ghost, it's not, spoiler alert, I guess, but there is an actual ghost here. The paranoia aspect of this movie is strong. It does work. And again, with that Rosemary's Baby connection, it makes some sense. But I also like the mystery subgenre for this, and I like that a lot because I think the mystery is the strongest point of this movie, aside from Mia Farrow, that really draws you in and captivates. In fact, I kind of think that maybe one of the issues with this movie might be that the mystery needed to be jump started a little bit earlier, brought in earlier into the movie. But it's a minor nitpick for me. It might be a major nitpick for other people, but it's a minor nitpick for me. But the mystery subgenre, again, that's a fairly competitive subgenre, but this would be a good fit for that. But there's a few other subgenres that we could talk about as well. The supernatural subgenre, Arguably, the depression subgenre, you could make an argument for that. The UK subgenre, there's a lot of different options of places where we could fit, and that helps make a case for it being on the syllabus. Like, I kind of want to be able to find a place for it, and so the fact that it would qualify in a lot of different places makes it kind of an easier sell. These movies like I used to, I use The Thing as an example of this. The Thing could be in Aliens, it could be in Paranoia, it can be in Mystery, it can be in Nature and Isolation. There's so many places you can put The Thing because it fits so many different body horror, right? That you can always find a place for it somewhere. And so this is a movie that I feel, I'm not comparing it to The Thing, but I'm just saying that it has a lot of different aspects to it that fit in a lot of different subgenres. So it makes it a lot easier to find it a home. And I do think it would be worth finding a home for it because it is a very good movie, very interesting, and it does seem to have some sort of reputation. Like, it's noteworthy enough that I knew the name of it without knowing anything else about it. It had been mentioned enough times, or I'd seen it on lists or whatever enough times that I knew the name of it. I knew what this movie. I knew I'd heard of this movie when I saw it recommended. I just didn't know anything about it. And mind you, again, not as noteworthy as like Rosemary's Baby, obviously, but still noteworthy in its own right, and a really good movie. Definitely worth your time if you haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, I am recommending that you check it out. Like I said, it's slow burn, so be aware of that. It's 1970s pacing, and on top of it being a 70s movie, it's a slow burn. But I do think it's worth the payoff. I do think the ending is great, and I do think it should be something that you should put on your list, and it's something that should make it onto the syllabus. So check it out and let me know what you think. But that's going to do it for our exploration into Haunting of Julia. Like I said, I had a good time with this one. I thought I knew what to expect, and it was a little bit different than what I was expecting, but in a good way, and definitely was worth my time. So check it out again. If you haven't seen it now, I'm going to check out a Horror Trivia Pursuit card. It's around that time, like I always do, because it's that time, right? Like at the end of the video, I'm going to answer a question live on camera. For those of you that know, you already know this, but for those of you that are new here, we answer a question live on camera, and I hopefully will not embarrass myself by calling myself Professor Victor and then flubbing a question here. But since we're talking about Haunting of Julia, we're going to talk about supernatural, the supernatural category on the card. Here's our question for today. Who directed 2015's Crimson Peak? This one is, in my opinion, very easy. Now, it turns out we have talked about Crimson Peak on the channel. We did do an exploration into it, and I'm pretty sure we did. I'm almost like now I'm second guessing myself. Did we do a Crimson Peak? Like, viewers, let me know. Like, I'm not going to look it up right now, obviously, but like, if we have not done Crimson Peak, we will be doing it in the future. I guarantee you that. But I'm like 95% sure we talked about Crimson Peak previously, but from the right of me, I can't think about what video that would be in right now. Anyways, I'm going off target here. Crimson Peak was something we either did or will talk about on the syllabus. So it's syllabus-worthy, right? And the director is, we've talked about the director a lot on the channel. Let's just put it that way. We've talked about, that's a clue for you. We've talked about this director a lot. I know for a fact that we have not done every movie that this director's done, but we have done most of his movies. And I guess I'm giving you a clue, although not much of a clue, I guess, but considering how few female directors get praise out here. But that's a topic for another video. Anyways, I'm kind of prattling on, giving you a little bit of time to think about it. I know the answer to this question, but go ahead and lock in a guess, because I'm going to go ahead and answer the question now. Locked in? Okay. So the director of Crimson Peak, of course, is Guillermo del Toro, the visionary director who makes beautiful, gorgeous movies. And Crimson Peak is a gorgeous movie. But let's go ahead and double check the card. Guillermo del Toro. So yeah, that one, again, like I knew that one. That was easy. I'm not, terribly surprised by that one. But if you didn't know that one and you guessed something different, let me know what you guessed, because I'd be curious to know. But if you've seen Crimson Peak, let me know what you think of it. It gets some divergent opinions. I liked it, but I don't think it's his best work by a stretch of the imagination. But let me know what you think of Crimson Peak. Let me know what you think of Haunting of Julia if you've seen it. And if you haven't seen it, let me know when you check it out, or if you're going to check it out, because I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it too. I'm pretty solid about that one. I liked that one quite a bit, but let me know what you guys think. And then let me know other recommendations. It doesn't have to be ghost movies either. It can be any kind of movie. But if I haven't seen it before, maybe I'll do a video about it. No guarantees, but I've been cranking out this list quite a bit. I'm enjoying it. You guys have made some really good recommendations. Generally, I never hate the movies. I either like them or really, really like them. So keep the recommendations coming. That's going to do it for the rest of this week. Next week, we'll be looking at something completely different. But until then, I'm just going to say, class dismissed.